A very good morning and welcome to Morning Express on this 19th day of November 2020. My name is Michael Gitonga. Glad to host you right here as we continue to bring you news and reviews. As usual, we're going to start off with looking at what's making headlines internationally and locally on the dailies. Then after that, we'll get into some discussion of subject matter. One of them being black tax. I didn't even know that it had a name. But black tax is where you pay or send contributions to your family even as you start working. We know it particularly as an African cultural thing, but we'll be looking at it from the extent of, is it fair? At what point are you allowed to actually now, make your life? Because the family, particularly when you get a job, expects that you support them and support your siblings and support everybody if you're the only one who is working. We'll also be looking at the Huduma number, which now has been launched, and in 2 weeks, apparently you're going to be getting text messages reminding you or letting you know where to collect your Huduma card. But there's also a question on reggae, which has been paused, according to some. And this is after the president and the deputy president had a meeting yesterday. What is interesting is that the deputy president had just tweeted, and he had said that a yes-no contest was uncalled for. Soon after that, they meet with the president at State House, and then the signature drive is postponed indefinitely. What is going on? That's what we're going to be looking at. But as we do that, the question that we'd like you to, answer, and we are asking is, do you support the indefinite suspension of the signature collection drive, which was set to kick off yesterday? Do you support the suspension of the signature drive collection drive that was supposed to kick off yesterday? And this, of course, would be in line of trying to ensure that it is an uncontested referendum, one that has no yes, no question. So there you go. That's the question that we would like to have you answer. This morning, I am joined by Stephen Mwekesi, who is a public policy analyst. Thank you for joining us this morning to just go through the dailies. But before I engage you, let's start off with what's making headlines on the international plane. And we look at what's on the international dailies, starting off with the Citizen in Tanzania, where Tanzania inches up governance index. Tanzanians' governance progress moved up last year, even as most African countries slowed for the first time in a decade last year. So Tanzania seems to be improving in terms of their leadership. I'm sure there's some who would quite refuse or argue that that may not be true. But there you go. Moving on to the Daily Monitor in Uganda, and you have Robert Kyagulanyi, who is better known as Bobi Wine, who was viciously arrested and detained on Wednesday afternoon in Luku district. Of course, Uganda, we do know, have been struggling to, have multi-party and divergent views, and particularly in matters politics. But that has been a challenge, and you have Bobi Wine there being arrested, and I believe there was also some of his followers who had been arrested as well. Let's move on to another paper, but that's what's happening in Uganda. In Rwanda, we have returnees from DR Congo crave a fresh start. And these are people who are coming back from Democratic Republic of Congo back to Rwanda, and they are not only overjoyed to be reintegrated into society, but dependents of combatants who returned from the DR Congo last year on Tuesday. And you can see that picture there. Certainly a huge number of them coming back. And of course, they're hoping to be well received and reintegrated into the society. Let's look at BBC, where the US has now recorded 250,000 COVID-19 deaths. They are currently at 500,000. All right, US records 250,000 COVID-19 deaths, and definitely US still leading in terms of the numbers of confirmed cases of COVID-19. I believe they're at 500,000 right now and still counting. So they now have 250,000 COVID-19 deaths. Kenya is also not doing too well in terms of having COVID-19 under wraps and control. But there you go. That's what we have on the international plane. And a correction there that the signature drive was to begin today, but has been postponed indefinitely. All right, so now let's look at what's making headlines on the dailies here locally. And we start off with the Standard, where we have Uhuru meets Ruto as BBI signature drive called off. And let me start, Stephen, by just your thoughts on what this may indicate. We definitely have had back and forth. We do know that the Deputy President, right from the beginning, was not so much for the BBI report as it is. He later agreed that he would be okay with it, but with the amendments coming in. What do you make of the new, progress here?
Michael, thank you for welcoming me here this morning. Actually, my thinking of what happened yesterday is just a clear indication that clearly there are a lot of people who have really put forward a position that they would want their views incorporated in this particular document. Remember, by launching the signature collection, it means that they would have already agreed on the constitutional amendment bill that will be the subject of the referendum. So, as we were seeing yesterday from what the Nairobi committee of BBI put out in the press release last evening, is that the government printer had not yet completed doing that particular document. And it seems that the moment that document would have been printed by the government printer, there would have been no going back. And it seems by the fact that they sat down together with the Deputy President, the President was able to come to an agreement that indeed there was something that needed to be put forward so that it can be incorporated in the Constitutional Amendment Bill.
All right, and I guess that would be progress in the right direction, because this particular document, the Building Bridges Initiative proposal, is one that is supposed to unite Kenyans. And so far, we definitely were not seeing that happening. Do you think this would be a step in the right direction?
I believe so, Michael. I think the moment that this has been put onto a definite chiller, it means that people are now willing to have a discussion and beginning to talk. A 3-hour meeting between the President and the Deputy, and the subject matter or the outcome of it being that a signature collection drive is put on hold, it definitely means that people have been put to that particular position of having to listen to each other. And that tweet by the Deputy President, I think, was a very strong indication of what the mood in the country is. And for the President to take a keen ear and listen to such a statement and even take that, agree with that position with the Deputy President, shows that we have a listening President, and this referendum will definitely be one that will be inclusive as opposed to what was being touted before. There are hardline positions that have been put forward. There are positions which people are very confident that the moment they're included within that referendum, they will not be able to pass. So when we have this kind of a quagmire where people cannot be able to agree between these particular positions and we cannot come to a place where it is harmonized, then we'll have a contested referendum. And the country, most people are for an uncontested referendum.
Okay, one of the things, of course, that has been a challenge, and there are those who've said, if it was possible to disassociate this particular document with 2022, then we probably would be having a better conversation. Do you think that is true? And two, with this new progress now of the Deputy President seeming to have won Uhuru Kenyatta over to at least amend the document, do you think that is likely to affect the drive that has been there, particularly when we look at it now in the lens of 2022?
Michael, I don't know how, as a country, we can be able to avoid of 2022, because 2022 is a date set within the document called the current Constitution, 2010. So it's unavoidable. Everybody knows that there's going to be an election in 2022. But the President and his friend Raila Amolo Odinga were clear that they were looking at this as a constitutional moment. The fact that the constitutional moment has arrived 2 years preceding an election doesn't mean that now everything that we do has to be taken within the lens of that 2022 election. We need to also look at what the President has presented, that indeed, as a country, we need to start looking at this as a constitutional moment. However, the realities are there. Whatever you propose in that new referendum, everybody will align. Politicians, stakeholders within all matters national sphere are all looking at what is going to be agreed upon within that particular document and how it aligns with their interests come 2022. So there is no denying the fact that this referendum is a precursor to what we should expect in the alignments and the way we will be putting ourselves together as a country come 2022 and during the election. And one of the key things, yes, you can remember, Michael, in that particular document is the IEBC. the restructuring of the IBC, the recruitment of commissioners, how they intend even the staff to be maintained within that particular election period. So these are the things that are extremely fundamental, and it cannot be ignored that when we are seated there waiting for this particular referendum to happen or not, it will have a very big impact on what happens come 2022.
All right, and 2022 is obviously one that I'm sure all politicians are looking with a keen eye. On the Daily Nation, it makes it to the front page with BBI reggae posed as Uhuru Ruto hold talks. So that's what we're going to be discussing this as well with a governance consultant, a governance expert, and a member of parliament, just to see what that means. But let's look at other stories. But before that, there's also a story on the front page of the Standard. Governor, my fight with COVID-19. This is the governor for Nyeri, Mutahi Kahiga, who is the first governor to come out and openly talk about his fight and his struggle with COVID-19 when he was, found to be positive. But that also is in line with a story on page 5 where we have Donald Korir, a prominent lawyer in this country, who went to Twitter to just, also let Kenyans know about his struggle, with a picture there being shown of him in hospital with an oxygen mask, and letting Kenyans know that COVID-19, one, is real, and two, let's do what we need to do to ensure that we keep the curve down. Maybe just your comment, Stephen, on how we need to take this seriously, particularly when you see leaders and prominent Kenyans coming out to say that I have also been, had COVID-19 and it is real. There might be Kenyans who still feel that, well, it is not that serious.
Michael, there's no question about this. This disease is real and it is here with us. And it is a very expensive disease. And we're looking at it, from the numbers, if you are symptomatic, a month you're going to be charged about 24,000 shillings. If you're not symptomatic, we're looking at a monthly bill of about 150,000, and that's if in your public hospital. Now, if you go to a private hospital, these costs go all the way up to 1 million shillings plus. And this has been what we've been witnessing. Now, the more prominent members of this society are able to cover themselves and take themselves to hospital and have the insurance covers take care of those costs. But when we look at the ordinary Kenyan, it's about time that we got very serious about taking all the measures that have been prescribed to us: social distancing, wearing of masks, making sure that we keep ourselves at home if we have no business going out there. These are the things that we need to take very seriously, because this disease is here, it's with us, and it's affecting everyone, doctors included, politicians. Nobody is safe from this disease, and it's important that we take every measure to protect ourselves against
Absolutely.
it. Yeah.
And I've seen people wear masks the wrong way and, literally do it purely just to ensure that you're not arrested, but we seem not to realize how serious a disease this is, and it is real and it is there. But there you go. But also still on the disease, on page 2 of the Standard, 100,000 teachers to keep off schools as corona bites. And this is after we've lost a number of principals. And by nature of the work that they do, principals and senior staff in schools tend to be in that older category where they are advised to stay away from any possible area where they can contract coronavirus. So 100,000 teachers to keep off schools as corona bites. And this, again, of course, is a challenge to our education system, given that we've already lost so much time with students being home for almost a year as we fought the virus. Maybe your comments on this and how this is likely to affect our education system, even in the long term.
Yes, Michael, when you consider that from next year, the school calendar will begin to run. It's a very tight schedule. We'll have very little breaks, 7 weeks in between. We'll have to try and cram up as much as possible so that we can be able to catch up. And there you have it. It's clear that much of the management of our primary schools and the secondary schools, most of them are at risk age, and that is 58 upwards. And it's a very trying moment for us as a country. I think the thing that the ministry needs to do now is to really look at their succession planning and the people that they are putting to be able to manage the schools in the event that most of these head teachers and deputy head teachers cannot be able to take part in the day-to-day management of the school affairs. So it is a call upon even us as an entire country, even within the public service. What are we doing in terms of succession taxation management when we look at COVID and the impact that it has in terms of the whole management sphere in the public service.
Right.
And I think if we take this seriously, things will work out.
Okay. And still on education, experts are faulting heavy school calendar. This again is, as we try to catch up with lost time, there has been a directive to try and cram up everything within a very short time to catch up. But the experts are saying that this may not be advisable. One, because children and teachers may suffer burnout. And secondly, because there are things that they have ignored, for instance, stress. And burnout, which is likely to affect how students are going to engage. And secondly, there could be a lot of dropouts. Maybe there needs to be that consideration. As much as we may have lost time, it needs to be put in a reasonable time frame so that there's not, again, too much stress and depression out of trying to catch up with the calendar.
Yeah. Michael, there's something that was raised by Sosion, a member of parliament, who is also the NAT Secretary General, that maybe as a country we need to consider having a health and wellness advisory council that actually advises the Ministry of Education and our teachers. And I think going past this pandemic, it will be very important that we look at the mental health of our teachers and our students going forward. And as you rightly put it, if we cannot sit and really evaluate what this crammed timetable will mean in terms of the mental health of both our teachers and our students, we might be creating a ripple effect and a problem in future. So it's something that we should really consider, and we must put mechanisms to try and contain a possible fatigue, mental breakdown, and an impact on our mental health that goes forward. The President was very clear in his State of the Nation that he's putting a great emphasis on mental health going forward. So this is something that has to be incorporated, especially within our schools and for our young minds as they continue to grow, and make sure that because of this COVID and trying to make sure we catch up with the school calendar, we're not exposing them to even bigger problems later in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And on page 6 of the Standard, you have 1 year to get Huduma number as IDs are phased out. So out with Kipande, in with Huduma. Of course, we do know that the Huduma card and Huduma number had created a lot of controversy, with some saying that this was just a government way of making money, but there was no progress in that direction. But there seems to be movement in that area. Kenyans are suffering when seeking services at government facilities. You are told to bribe someone for you to be assisted. We want to end this nonsense. That is according to Interior CS Fred Matiang'i. Do you feel that this Huduma card, Huduma number, this integrated management system for our personal data is going to help improve services that we get from our government?
From what we have understood and what has been put forward is that this particular document and the Huduma number that we will now receive, the card, will actually integrate the national NHIF, NSSF, normal services that are issued out using the ID, that is if you go to Huduma Center, KRA, and all manner of things. Now, when you're told this and when this is presented to you, of course, it brings about some certain comfort of convenience that will come about by having that particular Huduma number. And the fact that it is digital, because right now our ID cards cannot be used anywhere. It is just a card that you put in your wallet and that's it. But now, having it being integrated into a system whereby you can go anywhere, present it, and you do not have to fill a multiplicity of forms to get services done, it's a good thing. The funny thing is that over 10 million Kenyans had not signed up for the Huduma number. And the Cabinet Secretary for Interior has said that from April, there will be a new rollout of people who have not been able to sign up. And we have 1 year until December 12th of next year to have already collected our Huduma numbers, and the ID will become irrelevant. So I think it's time that we also took this particular issue seriously as a country. The objective is good. We have put in place the necessary safeguards. I understand the necessary laws have been published and they're before Parliament for consideration. We have a new data commissioner whose primary job is to ensure that the safety of the data contained within that particular Huduma number is guaranteed. And so my hope is that the moment this card is rolled out and we are able to access that particular card, it will eventually work. We will not have to keep filling numerous documents. I also hope that the safety of it is guaranteed, because again, one little hack and all our data will be confused out there, and we will be in a position whereby it could be chaotic. But I trust we are doing well.
That's one of the concerns Kenyans have. How safe is our data? And like you say, it's very personal data that is out there, and all you need is just one careless move, and somebody can literally either even delete you from the system, and you're non-existent. So I'm not sure. Are you confident that the government has assured us of the safety of our data?
I think when you look back at the launch that the president had some time back in Manyani, where he tried to show us that as a country we've been taking charge of the little technological items that are required within this particular country to make it secure from a cyber perspective and from a national security perspective, you will tend to see that maybe we are taking charge of these things better. But however, the fact that we have a data commissioner, the fact that we have a new group of people who are working on our data doesn't mean that we are safe. We will still need to be proven to that there are necessary backups, there are necessary measures being put in place, and beyond that, one of the things that is even more worrying is the impact that particular card has on our electoral system, because that number will definitely show up in terms of how we vote in 2022. So even our own democracy will be at stake with how that data is protected. So it's something that I would urge, especially Parliament, because they have the real oversight over the use of data and national security items, to really take a keen eye on what is actually being collected, how it is being stored, where it is being stored, and what safeguards are there to ensure that no matter what happens, a hack cannot come and put all our data out there and exposed and vulnerable to thieves in future.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, page 10, there's an interesting article there, Chebukati, why we cannot guarantee free and fair elections. And of course, this becomes a major interest, because even as we go with the BBI drive, whether it's going to be contested or not, whether it's going to be a non-contested referendum, one of the areas that we have suffered violence and post-election violence because of is the electoral, commission and systems that always seems to be disbanded after every election. Now, we have the chair for the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, Wafula Chebukati, saying we cannot deliver free and fair elections in the environment that we are in, and that needs to be sorted out. My worry and my concern is that we have 2 years to the election. We seem not to be doing much to the Electoral Commission and system such that they can deliver free and fair election. Shouldn't we be concentrating more on this than even, other things like the BBI?
And Michael, this is what was said in the Kriegler review. He said that we should be ready for elections 2 years prior. We should have already sorted out our legal issues. We should have already sorted out our electoral commission. We should have made all those things clear before we arrive at the 24-month mark. However, this is the situation we're in, and we're now trying to use BBI to actually try and remedy these issues. And worse still is what Chebukati is saying. We're moving away from a situation whereby it was an expert recruitment into what now politicians will be able to decide who sits as a commissioner. And this has created a lot of anxiety and worry for a lot of people, because we've tried this before. We tried it even from the days of IPPG, and these are the scenarios that came about that created problems for us in subsequent elections. So I think what he's crying out for is something that we need to listen to. He's been at the helm for some time now. He's seen what are the challenges. He sees why you should have a staff that is not beholden to a short-term contract, but a long-term contract. But again, we need to accept that there are systemic issues within IEBC, and probably this conversation that is being restarted in BBI could help us really interrogate what are the best options for us. It is not cast in stone that whatever has been written in BBI is what will happen, and I think what has happened is that it has opened up a national conversation. Chebukati now has a floor to say what are the issues that he's seeing going forward to that particular election, and the things that he proposes should happen so that the commission can be something that can be sustainable and be able to guarantee the rights and freedoms that we hope for when we carry out elections every single year.
Right.
Yeah.
And let's now take a look at the Daily Nation, where we have the headline as End of ID Card. We've already covered that. A short history of the Kenya's national identification document is given there by the Daily Nation. And the launch yesterday of the countrywide issuance of the Huduma Card signaled the end of the colorful era for the national ID card, which is poised to lose considerable significance and clout by the end of next year. According to government, you only have till 12th of December next year to get yourself the Huduma card if you want to get services from government offices. If you do not have your Huduma card, then you will have and suffer challenges. But let's look at other stories in the nation. On page 5 of the Daily Nation, half of Nairobi residents lack clean water, new study shows. It's embarrassing that in this day and age, the capital city of Nairobi, one that is, literally seen as a hub for many things, still lacks running water in some places. Your thoughts on this? And there doesn't seem to be much being done to ensure that this challenge is overcome.
You know, Michael, the one thing that we have to give credence to the NMS and what happened with the new Major Badi and the work that he did was the digging of boreholes in Nairobi. But I do not know why it took us this long to figure out that we could just use simple technology as that. Nairobi, the name from the Maasai is that it's a place of cool waters. Our waterbed is, there's a lot of water available in Nairobi, but it's shocking when you hear that half of Nairobi residents cannot have access to water. So I think it's time we became progressive in terms of how we look at solving some of the necessary issues that are affect our people. And water and sanitation is one of the critical things that any government should be considering before we go into heavy brick and mortar activities that might not necessarily mean that the livelihoods of our people are well contained and made sustainable. So I'd call upon most of these county governments to also consider that. What is the capacity, what is the level of water access in most of these counties, and especially the urban areas within those counties, because water is life. And I applaud every single effort that has been done over the last few months or years to get some water access available, but it's something that we really need to fix as a country.
Right. And since the taking over of Nairobi by NMS, there seems to be positive movement in that direction. And in the Building Bridges Initiative report, there is that suggestion that Nairobi should be under the national service. But there are those who argue that that is a clawback to devolution. What are your thoughts on this?
My thought is very simple and clear. When we started this constitution, we knew that Nairobi should be a county on its own. What has happened with NMS, and thankfully so, is that there's been a singular unit that has been well-funded, all right, and given the goodwill of both the president and to some extent at that particular level the governor at the time to be able to execute services for our people. If this mantra can be cascaded downwards to all these particular county governments and made sure that resources are made available on time and the teams that are running it are not doing it out of malice or bias, but out to just make sure service delivery is done to our people, then we do not need to be forming NMSs to do anything. We will definitely be able to serve our people. So in my view, I know it is a recommendation within BBI. I find it to be very difficult for Nairobi residents who form a bulk of the voters that will vote towards that particular referendum, for them to accept losing a county status or losing some of those items to a body that will be set up. I think we shouldn't deny Kenyans the right to elect their leaders and to elect the people who would be able to give them service. But now it behooves upon the leaders who have been elected to ensure that the moment they're given those responsibilities, they execute. Otherwise, being that a constitutional referendum and even changing of the amendments is something that can be done any time in the future, I think our lessons have been learned. But if governors do not take charge and take heed, this could happen to them in the near future.
Absolutely. All right, because of time, we'll have to end the newspaper review right there. Thank you very much, Stephen Mwakesi, who's a public policy analyst, for joining us this morning just to go through the dailies. A quick reminder of that question: do you support the indefinite suspension of the signature collection drive, which was set to kick off today? Do you support the indefinite suspension of the signature collection drive, which was set off to kick off today? Pragmatist says, of course, we are currently in the middle of COVID pandemic and we need to control and contain it. Thereafter, we need support economic recovery. Kenya will default on loans in 5 years, and so we must create no more constitutional offices. This will increase the public wage bill. We have Jenga, who says definitely we need a peaceful and cohesive nation where everything that is fronted should be all-inclusive and beneficial to everyone. When you listen to the opposing sides, they aren't stiff-necked in supporting BBI. They only want inclusion of all ideas. I'll be reading through your comments as we go along, but that question is, do you support the suspension of signature collection drive, which was set off to kick off today? Well, let's take a break right here on Morning Express. When we come back, we'll delve in more into the Huduma number, but also what, politically speaking, this meeting with Uhuru and Ruto may mean, and as that BBI signature drive is suspended indefinitely. We take a break. We'll be right back.